What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another day in the shop with me, Ginger Auto. We are continuing working on the impreza today, continuing on the wiring. We finally got that throttle body adapter done. That took way too long, but now we can continue with wiring, so let's get back into it. So here we are at my makeshift wiring table. I've been doing a little bit of work off camera just because it's really tedious stuff and I don't like showing that kind of stuff in my videos. So right now I am working on pinning up this connector, and this is the connector that goes up to my gauge cluster. And so you have things like my launch control wire, my boost signal wire for my boost gauge, things like that. Wideband. Yeah, all those go up under the dash to the gauge cluster and things like that. And then I have these other connectors that I'll be putting in here. And if you remember from the last video, these are the connectors that plug into the original impreza harness, and that's where, because I decided to keep the stock power wires from the stock relays just because they're already there, so I don't really find need to do my own relays if I can just use them. So these plug into the harness behind the dash or behind the firewall instead of inside the engine bay, just to clean it up. So those plug in. They have another one there, and then right here I marked where the firewall is. So once I get those all taped in, I can put it in the car and then start the actual engine work. So I hopefully plan to get at least that far today. We will see. Wiring can be pretty tedious, so we'll see how far I get. I have a few hours a day, but I hope to get that far. Alright, got all that done. Have all the connectors wired up and wrapped. And then I have the loom all taped up so that it is ready to go through the firewall. So here we have the power wire to the ECU and the fuel signal wire. For these I have pretty much just tapped into the stock ECU power and fuel signal. That way I didn't have to rerun complete new fuel lines or fuel wiring. I just tapped in the signal and ECU tells the fuel pump when to turn on and off. Pretty simple. If you want to do it that way, then yeah, I actually have this ECU power coming straight from the stock ECU. I have it teed into it and it's worked just fine. Maybe that's not a good way to do it, but I haven't had any problems whatsoever yet. And then these are the other connectors that I told you about that connect to the stock harness underneath the dash. and then they are now running in parallel with the harness. So I think I'm ready to throw this in the car. I'll fish a wire through the firewall like I did last time and pull it through. Alright, got the loom pulled through, got the firewall grommet on there. Everything's looking good. Underneath the dash, we'll get a light. We have the ECU plugs, and then I can plug everything else in. But yeah, I think everything fits the way I was planning, so that is always a good sign. Go me. So now the fun part begins of wiring up everything, deciding which way things go, and all that fun stuff. So yep, that's the fun part. So I have pretty much from the transmission back all split off. These are the wires that will go to my relay and flex fuel. I have my speed sensor to the transmission goes down there, and then my reverse lights. So now I need to put the manifold on, and then I can see where I need to, where I can have the wires come and then split for the different banks. So, but I won't really know that until I have the manifold on and see where it sits. I think last time I had it wrap more this route and under here and then across, which worked for the most part, I think. So we'll see. Put the manifold on and then we can see what we have. Got the manifold on with the throttle body. This is the first time that I'm seeing it with the throttle body, and I am very happy with how that turned out. If you haven't seen the video on the throttle body adapter, you should go check it out. I'll leave a link up above in the video. But yeah, I'm super happy with how that turned out. That just opens things up a ton, and it looks a lot less bulky and cluttered in there. So yeah, I'll just have a single, I think I'm gonna go 3.5 inch pipe, and that'll just wrap around. Might have to get rid of the stock OEM fuel filter to make room for the bigger pipe, but that's easy. Yeah, it's gonna look good. Anyways, back on track. From the looks of it, it looks like I will be able to, I have a lot more room under the throttle body, which I like. Makes it a lot easier, so I could just put the split anywhere in here, and that should work. Could even do it earlier. That way I could come off here, then I can go straight behind this head. I'm gonna move my coils down here. I think that'll clean it up a lot, so. Sweet, we're on the right track. All right, so I have my wires all divided up kind of to the banks that they go to. This is where my split is going to happen. And so you have to take your spark and injector wires, like here I have spark A, if you can read on there. So when you divide them up, because if you don't know, you have bank 1, bank 2. Bank 1 you have odds, bank 2 you have evens. So when you're dividing them up, you have to do A, C, and E on bank 1, and then B, D, and F on this side. So that way the firing order, or the order would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or A, B, C, D, E, F. So make sure you get those split up the way they need to, and then just depending on how you want to wire it and how your setup will determine how your other wires are ran. So the way I have it is I have my knock sensors going up here, and they're probably going to connect somewhere in here. And then my cam sensor, of course, because it's on this side. My cam wire is running on this side. Then on this side I have my crank positioning wiring. And all the grounds are going to be grounded to the back of the manifold somewhere around here. So they are all bundled up here. So yeah, it's not hard. It's just thinking ahead. Like I've already had to undo some things, like undo my wrap a little bit because I forgot to route a wire a certain way, or I forgot that I needed to splice into my ground sensor wire to add it for my throttle position sensor. So yeah, just thinking ahead is really the best way to tackle this. You have to say, okay, I branched off here. What all do I need to have going to this side? And think about the sensor before you get there. So if you have a sensor that you're going to have to add, you're going to have to splice into the ground sensor wire, then splice before you get there so that you can add the wire, and then it can branch off to the sensor before you get there. So just thinking of things like that, it'll make it a lot easier. So now I'm to the point to where I'm gonna get rid of everything that's in the way of the wiring. That way I can route it the way I want it without having to go under things and over things and things like that. So okay, got everything out of the way. Expansion tank, filter, coil packs are gone. So now I'm just going to start routing wires. All these wires here, these are wires that I don't have a use for. But one thing I'm going to do that I wish I would have done before is I'm actually going to keep these in the harness and bring them to a plug, probably somewhere in here that's kind of out of the way. That way, if I want to add anything to it, then I can just make a harness from that plug and go to whatever I want. So I'm going to add a power wire to it, a sensor ground to it, and then all of these extra outputs and inputs that I don't have a use for, because I've learned that further down the road you're like, man, I wish I would have done that, but I don't want to take my whole harness apart to add it. But if you just add a plug, then you can just plug into it and route it to your sensor or whatever. So that is something I'm changing that it's going to help down the road. And if you haven't thought about that, maybe you should do that with your swap as well. So yeah, I'm just going to start wrapping wires and see if I can knock this out today. So here's the update of the harness. I have it pretty much wired to where it's going to be. So coming through the firewall, comes through here, splits for the banks. Here we have the grounds. I have these injectors already wired in and plugged in. I have the boost control sensor wired and plugged in. The wideband controller will go under there. My coil packs will be here, which that's what this harness will be. And splitting over here, this group of wires are going to be all of the wires that I am not using as of now for my build. Then keep moving down. Here we have the coolant temperature sensor, which plugs in here. And then this is the gauge temperature sensor. So in your gauge cluster, that's what runs that. And then it wraps around here. This will be the, what is this? Intake. Did I do this wrong? Oh no, this is the, this is the injector, right there. So injector 6, 4, and 2. Coil wires underneath here. This is my fuel pressure sensor, and somewhere, oh, it's right here, is my intake air temperature, which will run into my coolant piping going across there. So that is where I'm at with the wiring. Have it mainly routed to where I want to go. I just need to plug everything in, pin everything up. This is where I'm actually going to end this video, so I can go work on my other engine, tearing it apart. That way I can get measurements and order pistons and things like that. So thank you guys for watching. I'm going to continue on this after I get the other engine taken apart and get the measurements. That way, while I'm waiting for parts for the engine, I can finish the harness and taking out this engine. But I need to order parts as soon as possible, so I'm going to go do that. And then I will make another video for the wiring. That way I can go through each plug and tell you how I hooked it up for those of you that need help with that. And if not, then you don't have to watch it. But that will be my next harness video. So thank you all for watching. If you haven't yet, subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. That helps me a lot. And keep your eyes open for the next video. Peace.